waking us up and starting us on our way. Lord God, we ask for your blessing upon this meeting. Be with the council members, the staff, the citizens, this entire city, county, state, and great nation. Let this be an effective and efficient meeting. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. First, the United States flag. If we move them over here. You can't find them? Group photos later. Over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. All right, item 4, proclamations and awards. We do have one item here tonight. That is a presentation of a plaque for community support appreciation for Ray and Sherry Jones. Do we have the plaque up here?
Wonderful, wonderful.
And do we have someone here to receive it this evening?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, why don't you come on up?
Both of them.
This is for all the years they have supported us, have opened their homes up to us on National Night Out. Every year we have the boat races in the bayou. They open their home up to not only us, but the Sheriff's Department, Parks and Wildlife, and Coast Guard. They have drinks and food out there for us, and we just appreciate you very, very much. And this is just a small token of our appreciation.
This is awesome. Thank you.
We really do thank you for supporting the police department for all those years.
He's got one hell of a.
One more right there for the heart. Got the shot. Thank you.
All right, that'll move us on to item 5, announcements and presentations. Announcements concerning items of community interest. No action will be taken or discussed. Council member comments regarding items of community interest in accordance with Texas Government Code, Section 551.0415. We'll go to item 5A, council comments, and we'll start with Councilman Simpson.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, good evening to everyone. Glad to see you all here. It's always interesting to see a lot of people at a city council meeting. It's usually either a good thing or a bad thing. That remains to be seen. Since the last city council meeting, I want to extend my condolences to the family of Ruby Wright. She was a Dickinson resident long-term. Her services will be Saturday, July 2nd at Cornerstone Fellowship in Lamarck. I also want to extend my condolences to the family of Grace Marie Mason, a longtime Dickinson resident, a longtime employee of Dickinson ISD, and mother of Captain Melvin Mason for our police department. Her services were Thursday, June 23rd at Faith United Methodist Church. And I also want to extend my condolences to the family of Andrea Greer, another longtime Dickinson resident, board member for M.I. Lewis, and was also the representative for the city of Dickinson for the Southeast Texas Housing. She was on the board of directors for that, and also on the Dickinson Fair Housing Work Group. Since then, I've also attended the Houston-Galveston Area Council meeting. The packet from the Galveston area should be in our packet. They have a new chair, Sally Branson, councilwoman from Friendswood, since King termed out and had to step down. Also a new chair-elect, Judge Trey Duhan from Waller County. And the name, the vice chair hasn't been sworn in yet, but it's the trustee from the school board representative as well. But other than that, they had a clean audit. There was an audit done, and that. And also Want to make note that the summer feeding program is going on at Faith United Methodist Church in Dickinson, Texas. Free breakfast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for children. Free lunch, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And we're also doing the kids packs at that location. So it's enough for kids to get until school starts. Free breakfast, lunch, and for the whole summer. And those are all my comments.
Thank you. Councilwoman Simpson.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening or attending in person. We really appreciate your time and your input. First off, I'd like to say it's National Pride Month. Happy National Pride Month to the LGBTQIA allies and individuals in our This month is also National Adopt a Cat Month. I had the pleasure of visiting Body Animal Services facility last week and was given a tour. Adoptions are $20 each for a cat, or you can take advantage of the 2-for-1 deal and take home 2 cats for the adoption fee of only $10 per cat. I also had an informative visit to our main fire station, where I was able to get an up-close look at our fire trucks and emergency vehicles. Thank you to Mr. Hunt for the tour. I also want to thank DVFD for their assistance to a structure fire last night in League City from that lightning storm. It's great when our communities can work together. Dickinson Police Department Marine Auxiliary, in conjunction with nonprofit Destination Dickinson, will host the first complimentary boat inspection event. The event will take place on July 2nd from 4 to 8 p.m. With new 2022 boating regulations in place, this is the perfect time to make sure that your boat meets all the state and federal regulations. The inspections will take place a quarter mile east of the railroad bridge on the bayou. Follow the signs from Highway 3 boat ramp for a complimentary boat inspection. You can find more information about this on the Dickinson Police Department Facebook page. The Pilot Club of Dickinson is also hosting their annual July 4th Children's Parade on Monday, July 4th. It starts at 9 a.m. at the Holy Trinity Episcopal Church and ends at the VFW, where there will be refreshments served by the Pilot Club. And so thank you very much to the Pilot Club for organizing this wonderful event, and congratulations to the new Pilot Club president, Cindy Del Palermo. Saturday, July 2nd is the Dickinson Chamber Market on the Bayou from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Chamber parking lot on 517. And finally, I want to say that I attended the Dickinson Youth Action Council, or DIAC, meeting last night. This group of students is working in appointed subcommittees, including voter activation, youth and community, and volunteerism and programs. The DIAC hopes to engage the community through initiatives and programs that educate our youth as well as adults on candidates, the voting process, volunteer opportunities, and more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
First off, I'd like to recommend welcome everybody here to the council meeting. It is good to usually see quite a few people in the audience. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good, but usually when there's this many people, there's something on the agenda that they're actually looking at. So anyway, welcome to everybody, and hope to see you all in the future.
All right, thank you. Councilman Brantley.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. Couple of announcements. I put some brochures out on the table for the Hope Connection Community Center being hosted by Living Faith Outreach, Pastors John and Gina Gilligan. They're having their first event July the 8th, open to the public. It's a family night with games and snacks and refreshments, so encourage everybody to attend that. And I think that's it, so thank you all.
All right, thank you. Councilman Decker.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I want to say to Sherry and his wife, Ray, thank you for allowing us to do what we've done all these years. Alexis Santiago, the superintendent for the city, he's got one heck of a man that knows how to cut the ditches. I watched him a couple days ago. And a neighbor saw him from a distance and told me about it. He knows what he's doing. We're probably real glad to have him. Thank you all.
Thank you. And Councilman Linton.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, everybody. I had a couple of things. First, we are in a drought, an extreme drought, stage D3. And I also wanted to mention that because of that and because of the heat we've had, remember about the humans, the pets, the vegetation. Priority on the first two, obviously. Make sure that you're hydrated. Make sure your animals are hydrated, that they have adequate shelter. And be sure, if you have children, check that back seat before you get out of the vehicle. I also wanted to mention that I went on a city tour. I went and saw the police department this week, talked to Mr. Frank Price. I got to learn a lot about their top 5 want list. Also went to the Public Works Department, talked to Alexis Santiago. Got to check out the dump trucks. I really wanted to drive them, but I didn't have time. Then I stepped over to the Bayou Animal Service and talked to Mr. Ed Boakes at length about the Bayou Animal Services and their needs. And I believe that and I also took a tour with the president of the EDC, Mr. Bill Schick, on Sunday. Drove around the community for several hours looking at some of the properties that they had some ideas on. And then I believe, and also I wanted to mention a couple of friends of mine I see here tonight. I wanted to acknowledge Al Garza and Premier Martial Arts. I was lucky enough to be at their graduation ceremony this past Saturday and survived, and that was great. And also just wanted to mention to the public some of the things you probably aren't aware of, but real quick, just a comment about all these people up here. It's been a pleasure so far. Everything's working great. Everybody's getting along, and I'm a lot more optimistic than I was when I first came into this. So just a shout out to all of y'all. That's it.
Thank you. Well, we'll see what we can do to get you nice and jaded as time goes on. No, thank you for saying that. I'm sure everybody appreciates that.
That's why the big crowd's here tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Couple items here as well. Councilwoman Simpson mentioned the 4th of July parade. I believe I've been invited to be in that parade, and the city will also have a float in there, so take a look out for it. My son will happily try to pelt you with candy because he doesn't quite know how to do it correctly. So I hope to see you out there if it's not too hot. Also, I would say this is the time of year where you would say, let's be sure to look at the tropics, right? There's a storm system in there. However, the upside of having a really bad drought is that it is unlikely to cause any sort of nightmarish or flooding that would cause widespread property damage. But some nuisance flooding is, of course, possible, so please keep an eye on that stuff just in case. But in reality, it's probably some much needed rain. However, please do not let that lull you into a false sense of security as we get over to the 4th of July. I know when you bring up fireworks, there's 2 camps. There's the people that love the fireworks, they want to shoot them off, and there's people that hate them, don't want them shot off. Even if we get significant precipitation this week, the warning is that the ground conditions will still be extremely dry by the time the 4th of July rolls around. So I really want to caution you, please do not shoot off fireworks this year. I know that you love to do it, but it is incredibly dangerous with the way as dry as it is. The county has a burn ban already in place. You're not supposed to shoot them off in the city limits anyway. Please do not do that. We're sort of asking you this time. It's a safety issue, not just a nuisance issue. So I'd ask that you please refrain if you can do so. Also want to mention that on Saturday, we hosted a green infrastructure workshop with Texas A&M AgriLife. I've attended a workshop very similar to this one before, but it was good to see a lot of the staff out there and some people from other communities as well. There's a number of things we can do to sort of work on water quality with the bayou, to help our flooding situation, our flood risk, that is, as we develop and things like that. And those are things that our city planning and city staff is looking at as we move ahead and try to grow our tax base out here. So just kind of be aware that those are things that are going on. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody here tonight, and yeah. So anyway, hope to see you again. All right, we'll move on to item. I think we already handled the HJC update, or did you want to add something, Councilman Simpson?
One more thing I did forget. For the HGAC, they did give Councilman King all the rights, lights, and privileges of an outgoing chair. He did get a resolution and a plaque and a few other things, and I want to say no less than 6 standing ovations. So it was quite a time in there, and I do want to make sure I mention that as well for Councilman King, former Councilman King.
All right, thank you. Yeah, he did a great job for the community in a lot of ways that may be tangible with actual money. So seriously, so I'm looking forward to that over the next few years as well. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 5B, which is the city manager update. So I'll turn it over to our city manager, Theo Melanson.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. First, I'd like to start off with a little video that we've just created for the very topic you were discussing, and it's a campaign called Stop the Pop that you'll be. So we're premiering it here, and we have special guests, several staff members that'll be part of it. So, are you ready for your video? Here you go.
The City of Dickinson wants you to have a fun, safe, and happy 4th of July.
Have joined up to patrol from July 1st to July 5th. We want to stop the pop. And did you know
More pets run away during the 4th of July than any other day of the year?
fireworks can trigger PTSD and combat veterans?
In these drying conditions, your chances of starting a fire or wildland fire with fireworks increases significantly.
All fireworks are illegal in the city of Dickinson.
Happy 4th of July from the City of Dickinson.
Just wanted to make sure.
All those fireworks were burned right after the video, right?
The City of Dickinson wants you to have a
We
fun,
actually fired them off before
Well done.
to let people know to stop the pop. Yeah. So I just wanted to let y'all know is that we are really trying to get the word out, not just about this, but several of our community events. So hopefully what you're seeing is a lot more engagement from the city organization to the community with things like this. And so very much appreciative of Jaree, our communications director, and our department's staff members and so forth who are more than game to get on camera. Thank you for that. I also want to let council know that we're knee deep in our internship right now, and interns are doing extremely well, doing some very good work for us. You know, looking at some of our fees across our departments and so forth, and really doing some really great homework of our sister cities, helping out the staff on that, really giving them something to sink their teeth into. They've given presentations to staff. I've even had a couple of presentations of my own. They're doing a great job. Really, in my opinion, a rousing success already. Really a testament to what our school district is doing to prepare our kids for the future, because every single one of them is doing some quality work that we can hang our hat on. Also, just want to let you know, as of today, about 3 p.m., and thankfully we do have some of our Economic Development Corporation here so they can spread the news. As of about 3 p.m. today, we did receive the final approval on the $3 million grant for the parking garage at Water Street. That is official. So next up, I was going to let you know that we had a kickoff meeting for Goodman Corporation. This is the organization who is going to be working on the mobility plan for us. That's traffic, walkability, bikeability, safety, traffic safety as well. So we actually had a great meeting highlighting multiple issues, many of them dealing with safe routes to school. We're going to be highlighting very strongly putting in safety features around the high school, as well as Silbernagle as well. And our hope and also Lobit as well, because of the stacking issue out there. What we're trying to get to is to be able to pursue grants where the state pays about 65% of the improvements with the local match of 35%, and also get the TxDOT to engineer the project. So that's kind of part of their deal, is they pay 65% plus the engineering for that project. So our goal is to have 8 shovel-ready projects over the next about 6 to 9 months that'll be ready for grant applications across the city. So you'll see some of them hitting across multiple areas, but understand that our biggest priority are the safe routes to school. And so you'll be seeing quite a few shovel-ready projects at that time. The next thing I wanted to bring up to council is you'll be seeing, as part of our budget, we're finalizing what I think is one of the most important things that we desperately need in the city, and that's going to be a redundancy in our fiber network. And so we'll be looking at laying the fiber network out, and we've put together a network map to do so. We are also looking at a complete refresh of the servers and rolling a lot of our capabilities to the cloud as much as we can. And we're also looking at having a backbone that would be a 10 gigabyte backbone for network, for the network that would be building the redundancy for. So that's forthcoming. That's going to be part of our, if you remember, we had received the American Rescue Plan funds. We'll be using a lot of it for streets and drainage, but we had also allocated some of it for IT work, and it was because of this network hardening project that we were desperately needing to do. So keep that on the lookout. You'll be seeing that in the very near future. But I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment and turn it over to Nina for our Pet of the Month. I think we have a very special guest joining us.
So we'll move on to item 5C.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ed Boakes, Director of Animal Services. I'm here this evening with Nina Baker, who is our Supervisor of Happiness. That's because at Bayou Animal Services, we create happiness by bringing pets and people together. And this evening's City Council Pet of the Week is Wilbur. Wilbur is 6 years old. He is neutered. He is microchipped. He is ready for adoption. His adoption fee is $45, and you can adopt him this evening, or you can contact us tomorrow.
Now, did you say 6 weeks or 6 months? What?
6 years.
6 years, or neither of those two.
Yeah,
okay, that's fine as well.
6 years.
Okay.
I thought you were, no, yeah.
Gotcha. I'm sure you did say
Wilbur
it.
is
Yeah.
6 years old, yes.
Okay.
And his adoption fee is $45, and he is ready for adoption immediately, and he's a wonderful, wonderful dog. He's one of those big old lovable dogs.
He's dog-friendly and kid-friendly as well.
Yeah,
And,
thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much. So if you would like to, what's the opening bid, Ed? Are we having an auction?
I got a gavel up here. We can do it.
Yeah, we get started. You got the gavel? Yes. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Did we have something else?
One more thing.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Where's he at? I don't see you, Michael. Oh, there you go. Come on up, bud. Sorry, I apologize. Can we act like 5B is still open? We have a buyout and acquisition short presentation to do. For some reason I don't have it on my notes. That's my fault.
Okay.
So I apologize.
All right. We'll go back to 5B.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Mago. I'm with Public Management, Project Manager. We were hired by the City of Dickinson to manage a lot of the grants that are ongoing or applications that are being submitted. One of the active grants that we have going on right now, some of you might be familiar about it, but since we're about to open up for application intake and since there are new faces on council, we kind of just wanted to come out here and give a little refresher about what this program is, and then kind of a little bit of an inside look about what to expect over the next couple of months. So that's a little bit what I'm going to be talking about this evening. So kind of just going over a little bit about, it's a housing program tied to Hurricane Harvey, so helping residents that were impacted by the storm. How the city will come in and buy out or acquire their property. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the difference is between buyout and acquisition, the voluntary versus involuntary. This program is entirely voluntary. Nobody is being forced to participate. And then we'll kind of go a little bit over where the program is at right now. So very, very high, I think this mic is done. Very high level. So this grant is through the Texas General Land Office, and the city has money to about $8.2 million for buyouts and acquisitions. So the city can buy out a property from somebody that was impacted by Hurricane Harvey. Once that property has been, the contract has been signed, that house has been bought out, then the house cleared, the land is cleared, and it's turned into green space in perpetuity. Cannot be redeveloped, no new housing on there. The intention behind this program is to remove people and property out of the floodplain or the floodway. That way they're not impacted by future disasters. Acquisition, and I'm going to try and be really careful because these are two different pieces, so not confusing buyout and acquisition. Acquisition is still buying the property. The city would be acquiring the property. However, you could redevelop the property with housing that's compliant with a lot of community development block grant regulations and meets some flood resistance criteria. So the current grant between the city and the General Land Office permits both buyouts and acquisitions, and we've structured the program to allow for both of those, if that's something that the city is going to pursue. Now, the program can be involuntary or voluntary. I guess a little bit of history about this grant. It was originally involuntary. It had been adopted by council that it was moving forward to be involuntary. The city had contacted some properties about potential interest in acquiring that land as part of this program for future redevelopment or flood mitigation projects. However, that changed, and now we are operating under the voluntary program. So in involuntary, the city goes out and solicits properties that are strategic for redeveloping to be more resilient to future disasters and taking people out of the floodplain or the floodway. The voluntary program is entirely different. The city does not go and solicit directly from homeowners or property owners. They, we created a program guideline that says this is how the city is going to operate this program, and then defines eligible areas within the city for participation, and then can use financial incentives to incentivize people to participate in the program. So it's entirely voluntary. People opt into the program by filling out an application and providing some of the documentation that their property was damaged during Hurricane Harvey. And then from that point on, after the city's reviewing eligibility with help with the Texas General Land Office, can make offers to properties that make sense, and ultimately agree to purchase the property and then clear and demolish the land. Just restating, this is entirely voluntary. There's no forcing people into participating. So a little bit about where we are right now. Like I mentioned, the contract is between the General Land Office and the City of Dickinson. It's a CDBG program, so Community Development Block Grant, disaster recovery, so that means it's tied back to Hurricane Harvey. So this is helping homeowners and property owners in Dickinson that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. The grant affords for both buyout and acquisition. The budget for this, there's $8.2 million for acquiring or buying out the property, and then that also includes any surveying costs, appraisals that need to be performed, any closing costs, demolition and clearing of land. And so what we've roughly estimated is that could be about 15 to 20 homes within the city of Dickinson. So with that, I mean, that's a very competitive program. While 15 to 20 programs is what we're estimating, just being able to help one person and take one family out of the floodplain or floodway is a success. So I wouldn't sweat too much about trying to back out into that entire $8.2 million. Still being able to help at least one group is should be the goal. The contract between the city and the General Land Office will expire in August of 2023. So that means all properties have to be bought out or acquired. All agreements have to be made between the city and the property owner, and then the property needs to be cleared, and the final end use of that property has to be achieved. So as I mentioned, the city staff, everybody put together these program guidelines that dictate how the city is going to run its buyout and acquisition program. These were developed largely based off of a template from the Texas General Land Office. They are doing this in many communities across the state that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey and previous disasters. And so we workshop with that a couple of times. There were a couple public comment periods where the public was able to review them. And now we're at the point where we're ready to start taking in applications. And so from July 1st to August 31st, the city will be accepting applications from eligible residents for participating in this program. I'll kind of get into what that looks like a little bit later on, but that's the real big milestone of where we're at right now. During that process, we'll be able to evaluate beneficiaries or people's eligibility and support residents in submitting those applications. Concurrently, we're also working on procuring additional services. So our role in this is just general grant administration, making sure that the city's staying compliant with General Land Office and CDBG requirements, but also working on getting appraisers, inspectors, and other services that I mentioned before that are necessary for this program that will also be paid out by the grant. It's nothing that the city would need to come out of pocket for. This is all built into that $8.2 million. And then ultimately, going through the same procurement process that, we would be hired under or an engineer, those contracts would then be coming back to City Council at some point soon for award. The housing guidelines that the city is operating under for this program, as I mentioned, were developed between city staff and the General Land Office. Once again, just reiterating, it's entirely voluntary. There were 8 eligible program areas that were developed based off of repetitive loss maps and data that we were looking at across the city. And so these areas are spread out around the city. The eligible applicants, they can receive up to about $35,000 in incentives for participating in this program. That's a combination of relocation assistance, down payment assistance. If you're a tenant and you're renting at a house where that property owner is participating, there's relocation assistance that's paid out to you as being a participant in this program. And then city staff, we work with them to develop a page on the website that has some important details for residents to help them navigate through this process. And the program guidelines for this are easily accessible there, as well as the program eligibility map. So in the housing guidelines, there was a scoring criteria that was developed to help filter through the amount of applications that could be coming through. Some of the big things for applicants to think about when they're coming, this image on the right is from the program guidelines. It's a score sheet that was developed. Some of the most critical things for applicants to pay attention to whenever they're considering applying or going through the application process is the property must have been damaged during Hurricane Harvey, and the owner must have owned the property during Hurricane Harvey. So you're gonna have to provide documentation for both of those. And you must also be located within one of the 8 eligible areas. So those are gonna be quick, easy ways to go and figure out, am I eligible for this program? And if people are having a hard time determining that as well, like I said, there will be assistance set up to where we'll be able to help people determine those. So a little bit more about the program schedule. From July 1st to August 31st, we'll be going through application intake. Like I mentioned, we're gonna have people here from our group and city staff to be able to help applicants work through their application because it's a lot of documentation. The goal is from about August to November to be reviewing eligibility, working with the General Land Office to making sure that the city is authorized to make offers to certain applicants. And then the first 2 weeks of November, the goal is to start issuing offers out to applicants. That way, going into the new year in 2023, the city will be able to close on properties in March to May, demolish and clear property that the city now, at that point, would then own and then take those last few months to close out all the grant requirements that come with CDBG programs and GLO requirements. As I mentioned earlier, the city has a website that city staff has put together that really details what this program is like. And myself and some others from public management will be here and we'll be able to help applicants go through that process, fill out their forms, answer any questions, and working with city staff to finalize that schedule. That way, in July and August, we'll be able to have all of that readily available on the website and communicate that to the public. Now, if I can just pull up the city's website real fast, we can show y'all what that looks like. So, left. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so click on this buyout and acquisition page. And so put this tool together to help people. Like I said, one of the big things was being within the 8 eligible areas. So put this GIS application together. It'll load and it'll show you the boundaries of the 8 areas within the city as it's loading. And residents can type in their address, and then it'll take them to that parcel on the map. And then from that point, they'll be able to see, okay, I'm inside the eligible area, or no, I'm not. So just click. Okay. So here are the eligible areas. You know, like I said, you close out of this, search for your address, and then, you know, if you pop up and you live in this area of town, you would not be eligible. But if you reside within one of these 8 areas, then yes, you'd be eligible for applying. In addition to that, there's just kind of more of a step-by-step process to help residents. There's a series of forms that need to be completed. So there's an overall checklist that'll be provided for residents to look over. And then for every single form that applicants could potentially need to fill out, there's a link to that document on the Texas General Land Office's website, along with a YouTube video that explains how to fill out that document. So this is all available to residents online at the city's website, in addition to people being here at City Hall at least once a week to be able to help with filling in applications if residents aren't able to get the help that they need from these YouTube videos. And then there's some more information on the side about contacts at the city that are able to help residents with this process. But we're really excited to get this rolling. I know it'll be a really impactful program. It seems like there's been a lot of interest from residents across the city, and at least submitting an application and, you know, working through the eligibility through that. But I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
All right. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have a
Councilman Simpson.
So I guess first one, just to be clear, this is a program exclusively for residential dwellings?
Yes, so no commercial properties are allowed to participate in this. This is residential.
Okay. And the second one, you may need to get back to me on, but I'll just ask out of curiosity. If someone has a Harvey home or an Ike home in one of these areas, like that was, because they're still rebuilding Harvey or Ike homes now.
Yeah.
If they have one of those kinds of dwellings in that area, are they still eligible? Does that affect the eligibility of the program or the area that it's in? Or
If they are, I don't know if this might, if they are within one of those 8 areas, their property was damaged by Hurricane Harvey, and they can document that, and they can show that people were residing on that property, then apply, and we'll determine eligibility from that point on.
so you got to be able to document damage. You can't just be in the area and want to get out of it based on the. Okay.
Correct, yeah, because then we need to determine whether or not the property was damaged by Hurricane Harvey, and then also we have to compare to make sure there's no duplication of benefits on federal dollars. And so that's some of the documentation that the General Land Office will need to complete that process.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilman Brantley?
Something you just brought up, when you say a duplication of federal dollars, if someone, say for instance, took out a low-interest SBA loan, is that going to have an effect on their ability to be eligible for the grant?
Not necessarily eligibility, but potentially the amount of money that they could receive from the city for their property.
Okay. The next question I wanted to ask was, of the $8.2 million, how much of that's actually going to be realized by recipients? So when you talk about a cost breakdown, what's the, and just from a percentage standpoint, what's your administration percentage, your services percentage, and your actual recipient percentage?
Right now, it's I don't have that information off the top of my head, just because estimating the appraisals, if we actually need to survey a property, the cost of demolishing a property, that could all vary depending on if we are getting 20 properties throughout this process. That could vary drastically. And also what the total value of a property is. I mean, there could be, I think the cap on what the city can spend on a giving a resident is, I think, $350,000. And so there could be properties that are much lower than that. So it's really hard to estimate how much residents will get in money from the city. Our fee is not included in that. That is a part of a separate part that's paid out of the grant. There's, like I mentioned, appraisal services are paid out of the grant. I don't know what the cost of an appraisal will be. That'll just be something that we'll have to realize after we go through an RFP process to get those services. Surveying, I know surveyors are very busy lately, and so trying to figure out what costs they'll be able to provide for these services. Once those costs come more towards realization, we get closer to that, be happy to report back on that. But as of right now, don't know what percentage breakdown will go to each grouping.
Councilman Brantley, we will say it's a fair market value offer.
Yeah.
So any offer made to a resident would be a fair market value offer on the land or on the property,
Capped at $350,000.
capped at $350,000.
I don't really have a question. I do have more of a statement, a point of clarification. Earlier, you had said that at one point council had approved an involuntary program. I'm going to quibble with you and say that's not precisely correct.
I misspoke. I'm sorry. Yeah, this was an involuntary program before.
Correct. It had. I would say, without getting too much into the drama, council never actually authorized. Council in a meeting, it was one of my first meetings actually on council, said it was pretty clear we wanted it to be involuntary. I'm sorry, voluntary. But we wanted it to be voluntary only. We did not want it to be involuntary. And then, sort of unbeknownst to us, it had become involuntary behind the scenes by certain members of the administration previously, and that was rectified later. But just wanted to throw that out there.
I apologize for.
You're like half right. I
Yeah.
mean, it was, but it was not authorized by us, which was a problem. Anyway, okay. Are there any other questions?
I do have a follow-up question.
Councilman Brandon.
And this is more to you, Theo, but from your understanding, the services, demolition, appraisal, title insurance, survey, are those things that will be competitively bid? And will the city take RFPs on those, or are those strictly to be selected by?
It'll be RFP'd out because it's going to be a requirement of the federal. That's one of the federal requirements. We have to show the bidding process and score sheets on all that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item 6, public comments. Members of the public are invited to give comments at this time, lasting not longer than 3 minutes. Comments may be general in nature or may address a specific agenda item and should be directed at the entire council, not individual members of council or staff. Any speaker making personal attacks or using vulgar or profane language shall forfeit his or her remaining time and shall be seated. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the city council may not deliberate. We have a few people signed up this evening, and first up is Al Garza. If you'd please come up and give your name and your address, sir.
Hello, City Council, Honorable City Council. I'm impressed with how y'all handle that. My name is Al Garza. I live at 2707 Jamestown here in Dickinson. Have a business at here in Dickinson next to the boot barn there. It's Al Garza's Premier Martial Arts. And our location here was thriving, and we decided we would take on the next space that's been vacant there, and we've come up with a roadblock. We've been in business here in Dickinson for 45 years and have impacted the community, raised a lot of the children and families here in town, teaching them respect, discipline, and honor and self-defense, and teaching them confidence. And my son is going to present the problem to you guys, and then we have a few supporters that would like to speak on our behalf. And we're just going to ask that if y'all could consider to take a look at that and see if what we're being asked to do is logical. And if it's not, if you could give us some grace with that, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Cody Garza. Please give your name and your address.
So my name is Cody Garza. The address is 3455 Gulf Freeway. So my dad and I, Al Garza, own the Premier Martial Arts here in Dickinson. And what we're requesting is a variance in the ordinance that's requiring us to replace our place where we have our doors currently with windstorm glass. So I'm going to kind of go into detail here, but basically we're taking on about 4,000 square foot next to our space, and we've run into a lot of roadblocks, kind of stemming from Ray Burgess retiring that I don't have time to get into right now. However, I'm happy to explain those later if you like. But basically this certain delay here has made it to where it's causing us more delays and around an extra $10,000 in costs on our family-run business that we've been doing here in Dickinson. So I do want to be clear that we totally understand and respect the importance of windstorm glass in this coastal area. If it was a thing where it's new construction, or if it was a thing where our landlord was coming in and being asked to replace all of the glass across our space, I would understand. That's not the case for us, though. We have in that Dickinson Plaza around 800 feet of window frontage. Of that frontage, we personally lease at Premier Martial Arts 135 feet of it. None of the other windows are windstorm certified in the entire facility. We are just trying to relocate a door from one place to another because we're coming into center and having a new grand entrance. And so where we take those doors out, we're simply asking to go back in with like materials, with like framing, like glass, what would match the entire space, instead of having to come back with windstorm certified glass and windstorm certified framing and inspections that is going to cost, like I said, around an extra $10,000 in fees and time for inspections and things. And so we would just like to be able to let Jeff, the inspector who's inspecting our regular framing, inspect it instead of having a windstorm inspector inspect it, and just make it match the space instead of having one little section of windstorm glass. Again, just in closing, we're talking about 10 feet out of 135 feet of window, and overall in the entire complex is 800 square feet or feet of window. And I think we know that if a hurricane force winds came in, that 8 foot of windstorm glass would not affect the damage of the space very much. So we just hope that you guys will consider helping us as a small family-based business here in Dickinson. Thank you, guys.
All right, you can't.
I can direct a comment to the city manager.
There's a few other speakers on it. Let's just wait. Next up, we have Mr. Zepeda.
Good evening. My name is Ace Cepeda. I live at 457 Ridgewood Terrace Drive in Lamarck. My wife and I have lived in Galveston County for 16 years. In that time, we have been blessed with 3 children. My oldest daughter, Mia, is 13. We have twins, double trouble, boy and a girl, Eva and Ezekiel, and they will be 11 this year in August. As a parent, I do my best to ensure that I am raising my children to have a positive impact on the world around us. My wife and I work hard to instill within our children specific values that will bring blessing not only to themselves, but to the community that we live in. Values like honoring and respecting those in authority, showing love and kindness to the people around you, and standing up for what is right and true. I also know that society today in many ways tends to work against these values, and that as a parent I must be cautious about the extracurricular activities that I allow my children to participate in. There seems not to be a lot of programs that I trust to teach and train my children, but I can say that Al Garza's Premier Martial Arts has earned my trust as a parent. AGPMA has the same goal in mind for my children that I do, to get them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Values such as a strong work ethic, physical and mental fitness, and making a positive difference in this world are ingrained in every student that participates in this school. And the results are overwhelmingly obvious when looking at the change that happens inside of every student, both young and old. This is why so many people in this community now want to be a part of what is happening at Al Garza's Premier Martial Arts. But as more people from our community want to join this family, the ability to serve them effectively requires more space. And as a family grows, so does the need for a bigger house. That's what Al Garza and his staff are trying to do, to expand the house to serve more people. Delays in construction do not just postpone the school from having a bigger facility, it delays their ability to serve more people in our community, many of which are in need of a positive influence in their lives as soon as possible. The Dickinson location is very packed right now, and unfortunately, there are some families that are leaving the program simply because there's just not enough space to meet their needs. And my ask, as a citizen of Galveston County, is simply this: please allow construction at AGPMA Dickinson location to move forward without further delay. The work that they do in creating a better community must not be hindered. Rather, the impact this school has on the citizens of Dickinson should fully be supported, and any obstacles preventing unnecessary delays should be removed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next is Mr. Tony Cott. Did I pronounce that correctly? All right, thank you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Tony Cott. My address is 5308 Winding Brook Drive in Dickinson, Texas. I am the owner of Rainbow International Restoration of Dickinson. We're our local franchise. We do water, fire, mold remediation. It's a ministry and business that God has called me to. About the time I've been in business, we opened up right before Harvey hit, and God's divine timing, we were able to help a lot of people. And around about that same amount of time, I've been a member of Premier Martial Arts. Now, I could take this time to tell you how impactful the community has been for my family. And I could take time to tell you how much Grandmaster Garza pours into his students and the things that he teaches. It's a faith-based program. But what I think I'm going to choose to use my time for right now is to share with you the knowledge that I've gained since I've been there and how impactful the 45 years of his business has been on this community. How many lives it's touched, how many people he's pulled from a road of bad decisions and changed their lives and their trajectory, sending out arrows, not just into our community, into our police force, first responders, but our military, and many, many other avenues and aspects. That service is so supremely valuable, and one thing that we find lacking more and more in today's society. The infrastructure expansion that we're looking to grow into with Premier Martial Arts not just benefits the community as far as our people and students that we're impacting, but it also is an opportunity to bring more and more people here into Dickinson. Their franchise is an international organization of business owners, and this will be a university to actually bring in those business owners so that he can share his vision, his principle-centered character development with them and send them back out into their prospective communities to make an impact. I appreciate you guys for the time that you give me tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. And lastly, we have Charles Suderman, who already knows the drill, so I don't have to tell him.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Charles Suderman. I live at 2705 Jamestown Drive. Al and Kim are my next door neighbors. I've known them since, I think, before Cody was born, right about that time. So I wanted to come up here tonight and lend my support to his request for a variance on this thing. A little bit of the timeline that was shared with me was they came in for a permit. They were given their permit to do everything that they needed to do. Somewhere down the line, when they're already in construction, they decide to move this door. That's when another person from the permit office came out, put a stop work on them, said, you got to do all of this stuff over, and you got to put this glass in. And while I'm supporting Al and his group, it's more of a support, I think, for small businesses in Dickinson. Because when we take the position as a city and we issue a permit for something, and I understand people make mistakes, but if we look over all the plans and issue a permit, and then we see something wrong with it, it shouldn't be more than a day or so before we contact that person and say, hey, time out. We got to look at this thing again. Not halfway through the construction cycle when they've already expended a lot of money and now they're told they got to spend more money. So I would really appreciate it if council and staff would look at this thing hard for a variance so they can get finished. One thing that Al didn't tell you is he's got another place over in League City. He could have easily chosen to expand that facility rather than the one in Dickinson. But I know the commitment that he and Kim have for the success of their business. They run it as a Christian organization. And if you've never seen their Facebook site, follow it, because there's some really good things on there, and Al's almost every day he's got some really good words of wisdom for not only the kids and the students, but for the parents and anybody else that follows them. So I ask y'all to consider that, please.
All right, thank you. I was going to ask Theo, are you able to get in touch with them or have someone on staff get in touch?
Yeah, what I was going to have is have Chase get with and schedule a meeting. Variances have to go through a proper application process, so we're kind of hand tied until that time.
Right,
But-
we can't
but-
deliberate, but I did want to add.
Yeah, but we might there might be some opportunities for us to work on that without having to go through a variance. I just need to look at it.
Okay, yeah, we just need to get you in touch with staff. We can't, as council, really deliberate on the issue, and as he said, variances don't go to council anyway, but there might be some other solution. Councilman Brantley had a
Theo,
comment
if
as
you could
well.
also get with Cortland Holman, the director of the EDC, because we do have the exterior facade improvement grant that may be able to, if we can't get past the requirement to make a code upgrade, we may be able to help out with the situation through the DDC exterior facade improvement grant.
That's a great point. I'll be
I just
part of
I just happened to pull it up and notice that this is right down this is actually what the program was designed for.
Yep.
So
100%. In fact, I was going to be a topic of discussion in said meeting. So if Chase can, where are you at, sir? There you are. I see you back there. If you can get with Mr. Garza, and we'll set up a meeting very, very quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely appreciate your business, and we'll work with you all. So, all right, thank you.
And Theo, if possible, please, could you recognize me?
Call for applause. Councilman Linton, go ahead.
It obviously wasn't for me. Theo, if you can include me in that meeting if possible. Full disclosure, I'm a student at the school. It's an awesome business, so
Yes, sir.
do whatever I can to help.
All right, that's all the public comments we have for this evening. We'll move on to item 7, the consent agenda. The following items are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion on these items unless a council member requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed after the consent agenda. There's a motion to approve by Councilman Wilson, a second by Councilman Simpson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That'll take us on to item 8A. Conduct a public hearing concerning a request for a subdivision variance, from Appendix A, Section 8 to substitute frontage on a recorded access easement for the required frontage on a public street for approximately 3 acres located at 5426 Starboard Lane and legally described as Abstract 208 W.K. Wilson, Part Block 13, Lots 1 and 2, BD S/D, DIM 314.2 times 415.7 E-314.2, Starboard Lane, Tract 32. and we'll convene the public hearing at 8:03 p.m. and turn this over to Yvonne Briscoe for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, Council, Mayor. This property is located on the southeast corner of Dickinson. The closest road is actually North Humble Camp Road, and then Starboard is actually not a street, it is private property. And we'll go to the next. So it's actually a private drive. Part of the application, that, as you've seen, is we do have a maintenance agreement for that. So the property owner has shown that they do have access on Starboard Lane. And so the variance that you're actually deciding on tonight is whether or not they can actually access and subdivide off of the private drive, because that does not meet our regulation. I do want to let you know that, on the staff report, it did also mention a zoning variance. That will be going to the Board of Adjustments next month, but that is because where they're drawing the line, they're going to need a variance from the setback requirement from the existing barn. So both of those have to be approved for them to put the line where they're proposing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any applicants here to present? If you give your name and your address, please.
Chad Williams, 5426 Starboard. I'm the property owner. My family and I have lived on the property for over 10 years. And as you can see from the property line, it's 3 contiguous acres. We've got the property where the house and our main area is on the 2 acres north. The south acre is separated from the property, so it's something that we've been maintaining for the last 10 years, but our plan has always been to develop and build on the property. We're in a situation where we think it's a good timing to pursue that, and we thought it was straightforward. And then Ms. Briscoe, with her appreciation, informed me that we meet the requirements as far as the road frontage, but there's some, I guess, ambiguity with the language in the ordinance that it classifies it as a public road, not public access. So our road has public access, but it is private. So the only thing we're changing is, I guess, the property hasn't changed, ownership hasn't changed. I guess the ordinance has been revised over time, and with the revision, the word public road versus public accessible road is really the distinction that we're after. So that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, there are no public comments for this item. We'll move on to applicant's rebuttal, of which I assume there's none since nobody said anything mean about y'all. So we'll move on to adjourn the public hearing at 8:06 p.m. And we'll move on to item 8B, consideration and possible action concerning a request for a subdivision variance from Appendix A, Section 8 to substitute frontage on a recorded access easement for the required frontage on a public street for approximately 3 acres located at 5426 Starboard Lane and legally described as Abstract 208 W.K. Wilson, Part Block 13, Lots 1 and 2, BD, SD, dimensions 314.2 times 415.7, E-314.2, Starboard Lane, Tract 32. Is there a motion
Move to approve.
accept?
Second.
A motion by Councilman Brantley to approve, a second by Councilman Decker. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item 9, ordinances. Item 9A, consideration and possible action concerning, don't go anywhere. Consideration possible action on an ordinance confirming a request for a specific use permit for a church in a neighborhood commercial zoning district for approximately 0.33 acres located at 5818 East FM 517 and legally described as Abstract 36 WG Banks lots 5-6-7 and 8, Block 2, Tropical Gardens. This would be the second reading.
Move to approve.
Do you want to approve that in 2 readings?
Yeah, move to approve in 2.
There's a motion to approve in 2.
Second.
And there's a second by Councilman Linton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? With Councilman Wilson voting no, the motion carries. Item 9B, consideration and possible action concerning an ordinance concerning a request to amend the official zoning map from conventional residential zoning district to neighborhood commercial zoning district for approximately .54 acres located at 3707 Fata Drive and legally described as Abstract 19 Perry and Austin, Sir, part of lots 158 and 183, 0-5, Dickinson Edition D. This would also be the second reading.
Approving two.
And y'all were, I think we need a photo finish that one. I'm going to give it to Walter. The sound got to me faster.
Well, I'll take the second then.
Okay. There's a motion to approve by Councilman Wilson and a second by Councilman Simpson. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, that was to approve in two.
Okay, and to approve in two. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9C, consideration and possible action on an ordinance of the City of Dickinson amending Article 9, registration of sex offender residency of Chapter 12, offenses miscellaneous of the City of Dickinson Code of Ordinances by amending Section 12-153, sex offender registry prohibition, penalty, and exceptions, providing for an updated distance requirement in compliance with Texas state law, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for severability. This
Move
would
to
also
approve
be
in
the
two.
second reading. And Councilman Simpson moves to approved in two.
Didn't even finish.
And a second by somebody.
Second.
Councilman Brantley, why not? Is there any discussion? It's like Jeopardy. If you say it before the question's done, it doesn't count. Here, any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 90. Consideration and possible action on an ordinance concerning a request for a specific use permit for a church in a general commercial zoning district for approximately .215 acres located at 2512 Termini Street and legally described as Abstract 19 Perry and Austin Lot 10 O-L 187 Termini S-D Highway 3 Dickinson with conditions. This would be the second reading.
Move to approve in two.
Motion to approve in two by Councilman Brantley. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Decker. Nope. Too late. Yep. Any discussion?
Can't hear.
Yes, the applicant here
are.
for this one.
Gotta be faster than
All
the
right.
land.
I know that there were some questions. I was going to ask if you want to come on up. It is likely in the future that, and we did approve this last meeting. I'm sure that you're aware of that. It is likely in the future, in the next several years, for instance, that there will be like a revitalization of that area. And there is the potential that there might be some businesses there that may serve alcohol in the area. Is that something that y'all would have an objection to allowing a waiver for?
We're okay with that. That's
Okay.
the people that we need.
Okay, that was the main question. If there are any other questions,
Yeah,
Councilman Simpson.
I sort of had the same question and just wanted to make note. I think someone had said last meeting that somebody would be offended at a church, and I don't think that was the issue. I think the concern was whether or not the church would have been offended at the potential businesses that came in, and I just wanted to get that on record. But yeah, that was my question as well, is if there was some alcohol potentially being served 300 feet from your doorstep, would you have a problem with that?
We're all right with that. We're all right.
So one thing I would ask of the motion to be amended to say that the special condition of a willingness to have a waiver in the event of that use being within the 300 feet be added to the motion so they could then go into the special use permit.
And who had that motion? Was that?
I would like to
Brantley
amend
and
my
Decker
motion
seconded.
to allow city staff to work with the property owner to develop a waiver for,
Sir, alcohol.
to serve alcohol.
Okay.
Then 300 feet. Yes.
Within 300 feet.
Second, do you, who seconded that one?
Decker.
Concur on your second.
Are you okay with that amendment, Lewis?
Mr. Decker.
Okay. All right, Councilman Wilson?
That was my,
That was your
that was
question?
my question,
Okay.
was on that, yeah, that waiver.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on. Let's see, that was item 9D. Item 9E. Discussion and possible action concerning an ordinance of the City of Dickinson, Texas, amending the City of Dickinson, Texas adopted budget for fiscal year 2021 by funding accounts and budget due to year-end actual results, certain findings, and providing other matters related to the subject, providing a repealer clause, a severability clause, and an effective date. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Wilson to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Simpson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9F, discussion.
Sorry, Harrison.
Sorry, we're broken up. Discussion and possible action concerning an ordinance of the City of Dickinson, Texas, amending Chapter 12 offenses miscellaneous, Article 2 noise of the City of Dickinson Code of Ordinances by prohibiting unreasonable noise in the City of Dickinson, Texas, from 10 o'clock p.m. until time to be determined, o'clock a.m. of every day, providing a penalty in an amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of a provision hereof, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, providing for publication, and providing an effective date. So is there a motion on this one? This one's a little more important as you'd be proposing a starting time by your motion.
I have a
Councilman
question.
Linton.
I have a question. Concerning the permitting, when are the fees of those permits defined? And who defines them?
We'll just need a motion to.
We need a
to get the
motion to
discussion
ask that
started.
question.
Okay, understood.
I move to approve the.
I second it.
Well, hold on.
I moved.
You don't even know what, he could say 3 a.m. I mean, hold on. What?
Approve the ordinance with the starting date at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 a.m.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
All right, and there's a second. All right, so your question, Justin, could you answer that?
Yeah, so from discussion last time, what you'll see, the changes that were made from the proposed ordinance that was submitted last meeting to now, we addressed a few things. One is the starting and end time that was not set until now, 7 a.m., which again is still debatable. 10 p.m. seemed to be the consensus from council of when the new rule should start in place. So that's, you'll see that reflected through the ordinance. There was comment about, one comment was made about you apparently have some agreements with trash collectors, with solid waste providers, and the current times here may conflict with that, so that's reflected in the new proposed ordinance that, that these numbers stand unless there's some agreement that, is in conflict with that, then the agreement would stand.
They start at 7.
Yeah, then that contract would stand under the current version. The bigger change is addressing what Councilman Linton said. So there was some discussion about making a distinction between residential areas and commercial uses. And trying to draft that here, there's so many different. I mean, I know that music maybe was one of the discussions last time of what do you do when you have some music location and that sound would affect maybe other commercial properties or residences near that source.
Yeah, I was thinking of both the permitting for those establishments as well as construction early in the morning.
Yeah. So what you'll see on the ordinance section 5, which is page 275 of your packet, there's a proposed added section to section 1230 of your code that accounts for that and creates a permit. And the noise permit, then again, this is something we'll have to work with the city secretary's office and get the structure set for what all will be included in that permit. But essentially, the code already allowed for 3 exceptions to the noise violations. One of those was for emergency services, mechanical bells or that kind of sound system associated with a religious use like a church, and then special events like parades. And so your code already allowed for special event parade type uses, which would be in violation of the code. But so this 4th edition would be creating a permit process that if a user, whether that's a construction company, I know that Starbucks was one that was mentioned here with a late night kind of spray. If we know that's going to be a violation, but that has to be done, then that company can come get a noise permit violation, and then we'll set the parameters up for whatever that permit approval process will be. But as it stands now, the provision here would allow for that type of system, so that we don't have to define what type of commercial uses can or cannot make those noises, or if we're not setting up any different times. We're just saying that any use at all that could be in violation of this, that opens that potential use to come get a permit from the city to knowingly be in violation of this, but except for whatever's allowed in that permit. And the way it's structured here, that you would have so they get a public hearing before the council. So it's not just a staff determined issuance that violation has to come to council. Again, that can be debated, removed from you here if that's not something that you want to see as part of that permit process.
May I ask real quick, as part of this, could the council, let's say just one possibility is like, I know that sometimes. I do get calls in regard to, marching band, practicing well before 6:30 a.m., which, of course, we've, in the spirit of, camaraderie and school spirit, we've kind of, allowed that to happen. Could we have like a blanket permit where they, basically a submission of a permit that says, hey, that basically city is making that off limits for good? Because technically our ordinance today says we're supposed to do something about that. Because we don't have that fourth provision, we're supposed to shut it down, like by our ordinance. So this would actually give you guys the ability to say, marching band practice is off limits. Can the permit be issued in that way, I guess is my question.
Yeah, there's nothing right now in the proposal. And this is supposed to be, again, this because we're talking about the noise ordinance portion and not setting the terms of whatever the permit would be. We're just allowing for that permit process to exist, which doesn't exist now. So the answer is yes. I mean, depending on what the council wanted to do with the structuring of the permit process, then you could set terms, whatever you wanted to in that permit. But as it stands right now, all this does is tries to address the distinction that Councilman Linton and some others made about certain types of uses that may produce sound that would be in violation of this code. Even if it's temporary or it's going to be some standing kind of violation that, that allows the city to work with those types of users that would produce that sound to be able to continue what they're doing under reasonable restrictions.
Without any discrepancy between residential and commercial districts?
This wouldn't call for that. So, I mean, if there's something, like in your scenario, a jazz, a jazz club or something that just has outdoor music playing certain nights of the week, instead of adjusting the code or allowing, a provision here for certain hours on certain residences or zoning restrictions, we're not even in the zoning ordinance here. This just allows a permit to happen, so we're not touching the zoning ordinance. We're allowing those uses to stand under a permit.
I'd like to kind of pit something a little more fundamental to it. I would really like to see the start time to this be 8 o'clock, and I'll make a couple arguments. The first one being, one thing that I think is getting forgotten here sometimes is that when we're talking about noise here, we're not talking about no noise can be created. That is not what we're saying. We're saying that your activity cannot create noise so loud it is like having a blender at your neighbor's house, like running in their living room where they're sitting or where they're sleeping. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about it's not quiet time at kindergarten for nap time. There can be noise. It just cannot be 85 decibels. That range is chosen because it's actually damaging to hear over time. It is extremely loud. With that in mind, we're not talking about limiting that activity or anything like that. It should even a marching band, assuming that from where they practice that it is 85 decibels in someone's house, which it may not actually be. I think when you look at what a lot of cities do, to me, there were some that are 7, but I think 8 seem to be more predominant. I think everything's worked out there. They don't have construction shut down in the cities. They're able to do work. Officers use discretion when they enforce these rules. People can talk stuff out. And given that we have a permit process to let people go earlier if needed, I think that provides the most flexibility. But if we're only going to raise the thing to like 30 minutes, I mean, we haven't really, in my opinion, done much to kind of address some of the concerns that have been brought up. And especially if we're going to raise it 30 minutes, I'd say, well, if it's going to be 7 a.m., then I wouldn't allow an exception. I mean, that's pretty early. So I would really like to see us push that up to about 8 o'clock. Anyway, I lack the power as chair to make a motion to amend it, so if someone agrees, you have to do it. But anyway, Councilman Britton.
I have a couple of things I would like to say. The first is I had the pleasure and opportunity to go out and personally meet with a couple of the complainants from last week. Unfortunately, I missed Mr. Hogan. He wasn't at home, but I was able to meet with Mr. Cram and Mr. Tony Duffy. Both of them, when I stood in Mr. Cram's backyard for an hour and a half and talked to him kind of about the evolution of the entire issue and the history of the issue. And I also got an opportunity to spend another hour and a half with Mr. Duffy. Actually, both really great guys. And Mr. Cram actually wanted to be here tonight, so I do want to offer my condolences to Mr. Cram in the passing of his brother. He wasn't able to be here. However, I did tell him I would advocate on his behalf. So I also want to mention that I made some comments in the last meeting about the ownership of JJ's Car Wash, and I actually had the opportunity to speak with JJ Stanford that Wednesday morning following the council meeting, and found out a few more facts regarding some of the complaints and the issues, and the owners of JJ's Car Wash, I will say, were very conciliatory, and have offered. We were supposed to meet with Mr. Cram. Mr. Stanford had agreed to go meet with Mr. Cram last Thursday, and unfortunately, I had to cancel that meeting because of my work. And so they both agreed to reschedule. And with the passing of Mr. Cram's brother, we have not been able to do that. However, as I stated, the JJ is intending to meet with those folks and do whatever is necessary to try and come up with some sort of compromise solution. So Mr. Cram actually is concerned about noise. He's concerned about the operation. I talked to him actually about the start date, and Mr. Cram recognizes that some folks actually get up earlier than other folks, and how that could be, an issue for other folks in the city. And I expressed to Mr. Cram that I actually had a hard time with this ordinance because I know that the origination of this ordinance has to do with this specific situation, and it's hard for me to determine legislation for a city of 22,000 people dependent upon what happens on Serenity Drive, right? So, and he was completely understanding of that. So I think that as far as Mr. Cram and Mr. Duffy are concerned, they're content with what we decide as a council, as long as we're respectful and we are cognizant of their complaint that they've had ever since the permitting process with JJ's Car Wash. So I think both parties involved were very reasonable, and I think that I was very pleased that I do believe that we can gain some ground between the neighborhood and JJ's Car Wash. The other statement I would make has to do with 12.30, because I read that today. And Mr. Pruitt, I would ask, does that have to be a function of a public hearing before City Council? I simply ask that because it seems like a permit for a noise variance, we could set standards for that permit and have city staff make a determination on a noise permit. I don't know that, if we have someone installing a roof, I don't want them to have their construction shut down because they have to wait 2 weeks for a city council meeting. I think that's in my opinion, that's something that city staff should be able to be entrusted to make a determination on, unless it's something, outside of a pre-established standard.
No, there's no requirement for the public hearing. I did that in case there would be, concern that permits would be issued and you all as a council wouldn't know about whatever the proposed use was or proposed noise source, but that can easily be struck. There's no requirement on the permit at all. So it's whatever parameters that you want to set on that permit.
And then I think, Theo, to your point with the marching band, I think that's typically something that happens at a certain time of the year as the band is getting ready. And I think because of that, it would fall under the special event or parade permit, in my opinion. And so we would just need to educate the school on the need to apply for that permit prior to any band practice. So
yeah, well, I would say probably the special event and parade is something that you're not talking about doing 2-3 times a week. You're really looking at something that would be once a quarter or less. I would say I think it would be really hard to stretch special event to being something that happens weekly, So to that point, I think really number 4 having something to be a relief valve. And again, I don't necessarily think it's, I use the school band as an example just because I've gotten the calls on that. But I mean, let's just use like Murray for an example. There may be, maybe we want to make sure that, every, Thursday, Friday night that there's a slightly different rule around that. Well, then maybe that's, I don't know, Justin, how that would work out, but we can put parameters in place to allow that certain evenings for live music, that type of thing to be kind of automatically put in. Again, we probably still want to make sure there's probably some decibel level limit too, of course, you know how those musicians play loud sometimes. But anyway, just thoughts, like that. We can put together the SOP and all that permitting. And to answer the question about fees, I would not see I don't see a need to charge for that. I think that's why it's probably not even in there. It's really just to make sure that we know what's going on when, basically. It's more of an administrative, like, if we get calls, the chief already knows that there's, we've already issued those permits to allow those things, so we're not sending officers and wasting resources and things of that nature. That's kind of what that would be for.
I see. I will say, and maybe this is the private sector side of me, right? But I would say that issuing a permit does come with a cost. So I could absolutely agree with a nominal cost for, and you could structure it maybe a daily, weekly, or a yearly license, in the case of maybe a Murray's, and have a nominal fee for the processing of that permit, just like we do every other permit.
Short-term for construction,
I kind of throw in maybe another way to look at this. One, I do want to say, I think that, to what Councilman Brantley was saying, I think the car wash activity brought this up, but I think what it kind of unearthed is that our ordinance seemed to be kind of out of whack. So I don't know that anybody is saying, let's legislate based on what is going on back at Joe's Car Wash. I mean, I think it's, lots of cities have set up noise ordinances, and it wasn't based on an incident like that. But anyway.
Then you have the but-for argument, right?
Yeah, well, I know everything goes back to the car wash here in Dickinson, but.
I was going to say, I will just to that point real quick, guys, just so you know, is that, kind of when the question was brought to us by the residents of kind of what are the time parameters, I do want to say is that cities, we are very wide open on the noise ordinance compared to pretty much, I have not found a single city in the state of Texas that has a more wide open, like, time frame for noise. They're usually a little more restrictive. Some of them start at 7. If they start at 7, I'd say they normally end at 9. Some do 8 to 10. I'm just saying that, but I will say 6:30 to 10:30. If the question is, are we legislating due to an event? Maybe, but it also kind of allowed us to go look at an ordinance that really, I mean, we can leave it at 6:30, 10:30. It doesn't really matter. But just letting you know, from the homework that we did, we are. Like, our timeline is probably about 2 to 3 hours wider than the majority of cities in the state of Texas.
I was not done yet, but yeah,
that's the homework.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. I'd add to it that I would say maybe leave it at the public hearing at this point, and maybe we could go back and change it later if we get inundated with requests, because I think. I mean, and we could send it back, but then we're going to have to come up with the criteria, what that's going to be. I have a feeling we may, at the minimum, if we do end up changing it, we may benefit a little bit from seeing a few situations brought up to us so that we sort of know. If we're granting all of these, for instance, and they have similar criteria, then that kind of helps us know, like, what we should put in. I suspect we're not actually going to see a ton of complaints from this. I think most activity is probably not going to violate this policy before whatever time we set. Just my thoughts there. Councilman Decker.
All my time on council, people after, especially Ike and Harvey, roofers, I heard that mentioned. Those people want to start at the daylight because they're going to give their people a time off in the heat, or they're going to leave early. I think we could deal with those things, but the roofers are going to start, they're very valid. They're going to want to start at daylight. And I can tell you when the roofing's going on because I might hear it 3 blocks away because they're all working at the same time. So we'll tie up our hands.
Well, I mean, you're also talking about, as you kind of prefaced it with Ike and Harvey. So, I mean, really, there are many, I wouldn't see the council saying, well, sorry, this noise ordinance says
That's right.
something. I mean, that's not, we're talking about normal operations at normal times and so forth. So, I mean, the council, you always have at any time to suspend any powers that you guys are
A roofer is
exerting.
normal.
I understand why, and
I have not heard citizens complain, Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, they replaced the roof of the house across the street from me starting at 5:30 in the morning last week after we discussed this issue, the next morning at 5:30. And that's a one-time deal, so.
That's right. They'll finish it.
Yeah, it's
Because they
irritating,
didn't have
but,
a permit.
you know.
That's because they didn't have a permit.
Just because they're doing roofing work, was it actually 85 decibels at your house?
I was too tired to get
Yeah.
the sound
Go get
pressure
your
meter
decibel
out.
meter, yeah,
Yeah,
that we all have in our homes, yeah.
that's right, that's right.
Okay. Other comments here?
Yeah, I was just going
Councilman
to.
Simpson.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to add it as well. Even when this was brought up last week, the car wash wasn't the only complaint. There was also Starbucks at 2 in the morning, letting out grease traps. I think we're kind of getting in the weeds on the noise thing, and I've tried not to talk about it because that's what I did for a living. Because start getting into whether or not it's A-weighted or C-weighted, and the decibels at certain distances and things like that. And I live walking distance away from Councilmember Linton, and I didn't even know that they changed off their roof. So it's one of those things. But I think we're confusing, like you said, noise from like 85 decibels is like a concert. You right next to the speaker. And I don't think a roofer is going to get that loud. Not swinging a hammer or now it may go out in the open air, but it's not going to be loud enough where it's ear damaging. And so I think we're kind of getting just a little bit in the weeds about this.
The big thing is that, remember, this is a nuisance ordinance, so there has to be a public health and safety matter. That's why 85 decibels is kind of the standard across the state, because as the mayor was kind of mentioning, was that 85 decibels over a long period of time can start doing irreparable damage, to people listening to it. So that's really what you're talking about. I mean, you're not talking about, a lot of the examples that we're using would probably not even trigger 85 decibels is the point.
All right.
I still would stand behind the requirement that to have a permit. I still think that could be managed through city staff. I don't want to penalize, especially developers or entrepreneurs with having to wait, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to have a city council meeting, to have a permit approved, to perform activities that may need to be performed. I think that's kind of a, I think that's overly penal. I think it's something that city staff is perfectly capable of. I mean, we have lots of awesome professionals that are doing a fantastic job, and I think they're perfectly capable of determining whether any certain project should have a noise variance. So I would request that be amended, but that's up to the opinion of the other council members. So.
To Councilman Brantley, I was just drafting this real quick here. If we want to amend that portion, and then if it's reflected in, if the council member wants to amend a motion to approve, subject to maybe additional time or this amendment, then maybe this provision would read this way to you. So that section 30, item 4 would be individuals. So the exception, what this means, exception to the article for the permit would be individuals or property owners who possess a noise permit from the city that authorizes noise that would otherwise be in violation of this article. The fee for such a noise permit shall be set annually by the city council, and any noise permit shall be approved by the city manager or his designee. That removes the public hearing, and it just makes it as a staff administrative program.
I could support that.
How do you feel about that? Because you'd be the one that would be.
Yeah, so
on the hook for-
well, really what you're talking about is going to be I think the big thing is very similar to what other cities would do, is to, the way you would administer that is if someone requests a special noise permit, obviously you would ask the nature of the reason for it, whether it's construction, so it'd be temporary. I think I see it going down two routes, and I'll probably let Justin kind of chime in on that, but I see two routes. One would be the temporary noise, construction type of stuff. They want to, get after it at 5:30 in the morning, or whatever, especially in the heat. Maybe that would be something approved. We would set some very specific parameters, is what I'm saying, is that we'd have some very specific things where you'd have X number of time, days to do so. We'd still probably put some type of decibel limit because it is before a certain time. Remember, 85 decibels does cause damage, so I mean, you really, if you're saying you can go above 85 decibels at 6 in the morning, you're waking people up. So, I mean, we'd want to look at that. Other cities, I mean, our sister cities next to us, League City, particular, but several others have very specific rules, such as having basically a decibel meter out to make sure that it doesn't reach over, and it has to be hanging at the property line to make sure that it's there. Those type of things can be put in place. I would say now the question I would have is might be to show council an SOP, what it looks like, and have you guys approve the SOP for us and say, yes, this is how we would like for you to handle it, staff. And the main reason why isn't really for the temporary, it would be for the blanket ones, like the ones that we'd be allowing all year long. Like, say, if we were to do one to make sure that, live music venues or the marching band, and, put in the parameters in place. But we could bring that SOP to you guys for you guys to approve it if y'all would like. And that would kind of be the middle ground of, like, you don't have to have a public hearing, but you can help me build the parameters that y'all feel are comfortable, and then we'll administer it, and we can change it as we tweak it. I don't know, give me your
So you'd
thoughts.
propose that we change it to basically what Councilman Brantley said, and then you would bring to us next time or whenever?
Yeah, once we would be done with an SOP, let y'all look
yeah,
it over.
okay.
And we can tweak it, and we can, unless you disagree with that. I mean, that would be kind of a middle ground between the public hearing and the.
I'm not sold on what I even just suggested, but I think even in the language I said, if it's approved by the city manager, I think any kind of standard procedure that you would adopt will be included in that, so we don't have to.
I like that. I can support that. If I need to change the ordinance, if I need to change my motion, I agree to change it to that, because I think that's what we should be doing, is just come up with what the council thinks is the SUP, authorizing then it to be administered by the staff and not necessarily you either, or your designate, in case you're not here. Yeah. But yeah, I can do that. And I agree with Councilman Brantley. So much of this stuff is 2 weeks is a long time, especially if it has to do with some kind of construction. But to Councilman Decker's comment, trust me, after a major storm or something like that, all the rules are off, basically.
Well, and we wouldn't, I mean, obviously, we have to make allowances for those situations, and I don't think that this is what we're governing, in this situation. But I don't know if y'all are amenable to it being like, we'll put together a best practices SOP that, as we've seen some of our sister cities and maybe some of the special circumstances we've dealt with, let y'all look it over, vet it, and if you like it, we'll move forward with that, and then that can be how we'd administer the permit. It's not a public hearing, but it's also giving you a chance to decide on how it would be administered.
Okay, so
I
you
would
want
agree with that.
to amend your motion,
Do I need to
Councilman
amend my
Wilson?
motion to that, to include that, or does it just be part, they just do it?
Mayor,
Yes.
before we make an amendment, I do want to ask Mr. Pruitt a question, and that is, if you go to provision 6 under 12.2A, I don't want to create a conflict within the ordinance itself, because 12.2A under 6 says that construction activities, and we've talked specifically about construction activities within the 12.30. There actually is a prescribed process which says, except by the Director of Community Development or Director of Public Works, may issue a written permit to exceed these hours, et cetera, et cetera. Can we also amend to make that language reflect the same language as 12.30? The city manager can issue a permit, or his designee, so that there's not conflict within the ordinance where where do you go for the permit, right? Or who can approve it?
You know, and normally, I guess the reason why you saw it under community development for the temporary construction one is because if the person who is administering the permit knows that that construction is going to go on and, you know, that permit is within a certain time frame, that's why it was there. And so probably like, you know, what we'd probably find in the SOP, which we can change the language there, but probably what we would do in the SOP would be to address, say that the city manager in the temporary construction would make the designee, you know, someone from the community development department, because obviously, to y'all's point, no one wants to wait 2 weeks or wait till they can get an appointment with me if they're trying to get to the next morning to roof a house, right? So being able to have some of the permit tech who's dealing with the permit and can get, you know, Yvonne or get Jeff to come and sign off on it would probably be easier, but we can address it in the SOP rather than the ordinance.
And I don't think, the language I suggested, I don't think would be in violation of that subsection 6, because if you have a permit, you know, emergency issued permit, then you're authorized to make the noise, and so I think you'd be fine. This is the way it's structured here.
Works for me. As long as there's no conflict, I'm good.
All right, so Council Wilson, are you?
So I can leave my motion the way it was?
No, it needs to be amended to get rid of the public hearing part.
So you can say you amend it to reflect the language that the city attorney recommended. But there's been also and if you do that, then what we're going to be saying is 7 o'clock. No, it's 8. It's 7 at 7 o'clock.
We don't want to change it
10.
to 8. I'll add, I think, guys, if we're going to allow for these exceptions, I think are good. I think it really should be at 8 because you're giving them. Okay, I'm talking right now. I'll hit the floor. Well, we're not arguing. I have the floor. There's no arguing. I really feel that 7 is very early to allow for that many exceptions. I would say if we're going to do that, you're giving people that are going to make noise every opportunity to get a permit, but it puts the ball in their court and has them do it, as opposed to let them do just kind of whatever they want. But I feel like I'm probably the minority on this one, so it is what it is. Anyway.
Well, compromise solution would say if you want 8 and Walter wants 7, then we could do 7:30.
I'm sticking with 7, period. If y'all want to vote it down, that's fine.
All right, so you're amending your motion to reflect the attorney's changes?
I'm amending my motion
Okay.
to reflect the attorney's, the suggestions from the attorney.
I have a comment to make, or
Well,
a
there's
question.
there's a motion on the floor. Do you agree to change your second to reflect that amendment?
No?
I'll make
Okay.
the second.
You can't. Were you the original second? I think it wasn't, you were the original second?
No, I wasn't, but
Then you can't.
so things can move on. Let's
I-
make the second.
I believe
I
that
have
was
a-
the
Was
original
Linton-
second.
Do you, do
I have
you,
a question for the parliamentarian.
do you accept the
Hello, parliamentarian.
Question?
hang on, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm running the meeting. Do you have a set? Do you,
To make it, you know, yeah, to take the attorney's suggestion and make
Okay.
it 7 instead of 8. And my original suggestion was going to be at 8 a.m., but I understand what, you know, Councilman Wilson's concerns about contractors working early in the morning.
all right, but you agree to his?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know,
Okay,
yeah, I do. I second it.
So, Mr. Pruitt, it's my understanding, you know, we approved the rules for council last meeting, and this is silent within the rules, so it would go back to Robert's Rules of Order. However, Robert's Rules of Order will allow any council member to make an amendment that could be voted on without having to amend the original motion. So we can vote on an amendment to make a change to the original
I'll
motion.
address that. That's correct. However, and I'm going to allow that, but there was a motion on the floor. He wanted to change his original amendment. So it was not proper to have that amendment yet. But someone is absolutely free to make an amendment. That's right. So is there another amendment somebody would like to make? To amend the original motion?
I would like to amend the original motion to 7:30, or 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m.
Okay. There's a motion to amend for 7:30 to 10. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Councilman Simpson. Is there any discussion of the amendment only? All right. Hearing none, we'll take it to a vote. Now, I want to be clear, this vote is only to amend the original motion. It is not approving the final motion. We're just voting to amend the motion to be 7:30.
On the time.
On the time, that's correct. That's correct. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With Councilman Wilson, Councilwoman Simpson, and Councilman Decker voting no. The motion carries. All right, so the motion is amended to read 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. Is there any further discussion on the now changed motion?
I do, Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman
I
Simpson.
just want to note that school start time for Dickinson High School is 7:10 a.m. And so you're missing about 20 minutes of instruction time for the band, and band is first period. Thank you.
I don't think it'll end up really being a problem, just because there's an allowance for it under that, and I don't think if it's getting complained about now, they probably won't anyway. But okay.
And I want to say there already is an exception for like the mechanical, like the ceremonial bells and so forth. I think it's number 2 somewhere. I think I just saw something where there's like similar to the churches, you'd also have the same thing for schools, institutions.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion here? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with Councilman Decker and Wilson voting no. All right. Okay, moving on to item 10A, action items for consideration. Item 10A, discussion only concerning improvements to Cemetery Road. Theo, is that you? Okay.
Mayor, Council, I want to thank you very much for that spirited discussion. Hopefully, we won't have quite as much spirit over this. Hopefully, we can all agree on the need for improvement of Cemetery Road, working with entities. Let's see, Chase, are you coming on? Who wants to speak on the Alex or Chase? Who's going to come up here with me and join me? Oh, Chase reluctantly walking his way up. All right, so this was a project well before my time. This was an interlocal agreement between the cities of Dickinson, Santa Fe, and the county to resurface Cemetery Road. And so what we did is that obviously costs have gone up, and so what we wanted to do is to basically bring it back to you guys. To the county has approved for their part of, and just understand what they're going to do is that the county is doing all the base work and getting everything done for Cemetery Road at their cost. The city of Dickinson and Santa Fe for their portions, and I think League City as well, because they have like a half of Cemetery Road with us on a half. But for all of our linear feet, they've assigned a cost for the asphalting of Cemetery Road. Chase, I don't know if I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but do you remember the change? I think it was 150. It moved. Our cost is now $156,000.
Yes, sir. It's a change order.
It's a change
right
order.
around there. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we went from what was going to be about $120,000, I believe, was what we estimated back before my arrival, and now we're at $156,000. And so we would like to move forward. Counties approved it. The other 2 cities will be approving it, and we're about the only one left in it at this point.
This sheet says 152.
No, 152. I apologize.
Yes, sir.
152 and change.
Right.
152.5.
All right. Is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay. So there's no action item here.
Well, the action is to approve the change order so we can go forward and,
Okay.
and join our.
Why does it only say discussion concerning on the item?
I shouldn't have said that an action is required. What I was saying is that I needed to let y'all know that
okay.
we're moving forward. I apologize.
Understood.
Apologize for that. I was actually reading.
I'd be
the
happy
next
to
one.
vote for it if we could, but
Well, go ahead. Why don't you just say how happy you are that we'll be for resurfacing Cemetery. But anyway, that was more of a status item. I do have one under there. So
Okay.
Apologize.
Okay, no worries. All right, any questions on that? Anybody? Okay. Move on to item 10B, discussion and possible action concerning updating the Value Animal Services fee schedule.
Ed,
Is there a motion to approve the fee update?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilman Simpson.
Second.
I thought you did. Second by Councilman Brantley. You have that look. All right. All right. So we have our Bio-Animal Service Director here. If you would like to tell us about the fee schedule.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Mayor and City Council. The city department, or the department has been benchmarking with our sister cities in the region and comparing and looking at.
Pull the mic up.
Thank you. Animal Services, Bayou Animal Services has no city enacted fee schedule per se. We have not been enacting or charging impound fees and a number of other fees. We have been applying adoption fees, but again, we don't have council-approved fees. So we have put together a list of fees, and I don't know, does the council members have the fees that we are proposing?
Should be. Yes, they're in the packet. So,
Okay.
so the main thing, and I wanted to stress is, and had wanted Ed to come up and speak to, is that really one of the big things is that what would be traditional fees that any shelter would charge. We want to go ahead and have those fee schedules in place. Largely because, when you're not charging the user fee for a service, then the expectation is that, well, then it's going to come out of the sales or property taxes to maintain those. Now, impound fees are very standard. And so what we want to do is, number one, make sure we're charging the fees that are approved, but also make sure that, and I believe that Ed's working with staff to make sure that we're very consistent on the administration of those fees as well. So two things. One is making sure that we put fees on the schedule that are pretty normal to shelter operation. Number two, updating those fees to something that reflects the increased costs of service, and as well as as we're coming into budget season, and we'll be looking at working on those contracts between ourselves, Santa Fe, and Clear Lake Shores. It behooves us because when we're at a loss, we are contractually obligated as the three entities to pay the deficit at the end. So I think it's very important that the Bayou Animal Services shelter work to limit that deficit so that the taxpayers aren't subsidizing it too heavily. Is that pretty much where you're?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mr. Mayor, City Council, we're also asking that there be a provision that would allow the executive director or management to modify the fees to manage shelter population.
Yeah, I looked it over, and it sounds like you all did a good job of trying to kind of update and modernize the fees and make sure we're consistent, and noted some issues where we're not even collecting fees even when we're supposed to be, and things like that. So I really applaud you for looking into that. Yeah. Is there any other questions or comments on this? Anybody? Councilman Simpson?
Yeah, I'm just curious, number one, how much, I know we probably don't have the answer, a hard number right now, how much revenue we've missed out on by not charging for all these things?
Well, it's hard to know without the book, without being able to cross-reference historically. What I will say is I believe, and Harrison probably has a better answer to this than even myself or Ed. And so shake your head no if I'm wrong about this. But, actually, maybe Ed, you do know.
Actually, we've been crunching the numbers and making our projections for 23 and going back and looking at what we could have done. And it's our data is somewhat faulty, and it'll be much better going forward, but it's probably in the range of $20,000 or $30,000.
And while that may not be the full amount of the annual deficit that you incur as part of the corporation, I think it behooves us not just for ourselves, but also to be good partners with Santa Fe and Clear Lake Shores to try to limit the deficits, because we all are paying pay off that deficit based on a percentage of our population. So while we make up 60% of the population, and so if we pay 60% of the deficit, the Clear Lake Shores and Santa Fe make up 40%, and so we're also affecting two other budgets with these decisions.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ed. All right, item 10C, discussion and possible action concerning authorizing a community garden next to the City Hall complex. Is there a motion to approve? Anybody?
Where at in City Hall?
I didn't
Where's the
find it.
location?
I believe it's in the packet, but if we can get a motion, we can get to that.
There's nothing in the packet.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll have to talk about it. We
Okay.
didn't get-
Motion? It'll be near the, just to say, it'll be near the, where Jacoy's, the restaurant is over there. There's a restaurant over there. There's a nail salon as well.
It's right next to the water district.
Right next to the water district. That's a better landmark. There's a big field next to it. That's where it would be.
Behind the parking lot.
All right, there's a motion to approve by Councilman Brantley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Linton. Any discussion?
Just, Mayor, Council, one of the reasons why you do not have anything in the packet is this is more to bring to you guys. Now, y'all could decide if y'all want to tonight based on, but my plan is to actually have a more formal discussion on July 12th. But then I was like, this is kind of a nice little, conversation to have anyway. And so what we're looking at doing is, so I was reached out to by multiple citizens who are looking at starting a community garden, was wondering where could there be one. And part of our parks downtown revitalization plan was to include activating the green space between the water district parking lot, City Hall parking lot, just to the east of that between Jackway's and the nail salon and the parking lot, to do something, whether it be a few park benches, maybe a picnic table or two or something there. And so when this set of people who'd be more than happy to be here on July 12th, really was talking about, well, where, we really would like to start up a community garden. Where could we do it? And so I, walked them to this property, which, because it wouldn't be incongruent with kind of the park feel and so forth. And plus there's access to water and obviously access to the parking lot, so it wouldn't be a big issue of having to all of a sudden create parking. They are going to be requesting, and I measured out about 0.1 acres of land. So it's not a very large tract in there. It'll probably take up maybe a third of that property. We are looking at maybe adding some parking facility in the future as part of helping to activate that little park area. But this was just an extra amenity that would really be at no cost or minimal cost to the city's portion, because they'll be spending mostly, in fact, if you kind of go up there, if you see where the arrow
Yeah,
is
here you
on
go.
your screen right there, that's kind of right there. And the square they're looking at doing would be really close to the parking lot side of the near us on the left side of the property, and it would be kind of in that area. My main question is that something, is that an amenity that y'all would want to support and allow to be there, even if on a temporary basis? Because this could grow, and I told myself if it grows beyond that, we'd have to find them somewhere else to be, but we can probably set aside that and not mess up any of our future plans for that property.
I'd say absolutely. I'll say that I know Mr. Brown, I think he wanted to be here tonight. I don't see him out there. No.
He was going to come on July 12th, so I'm having this conversation impromptu with y'all.
Oh, he told me today he wanted to come tonight, but he couldn't make it, couldn't get a babysitter or something, but he does want to come though. And I know there's been some others that have brought it up as well. There's several people that have brought this up, so there's clearly a demand for it. A lot of our residents have a real green thumb. I think it'd be a good thing for us, and we have a nice spot to do it on, so I'd say why not, as far as I go. Other comments or questions? Anyone else? Okay.
Mayor.
Oh, yes, Councilwoman Simpson.
I've been a part of some gardens like this before, and ultimately it came down to who's responsible for the maintenance, who's responsible for the plants, who's responsible for the watering whenever they volunteers, and they're all probably just volunteers, can't make it from time to time. It could become an eyesore for the city. I'm not saying I don't support it. I love the idea. I would just want to make sure that those parameters were in place and that we had sort of a long-term plan as to who was going to maintain it and who was going to be responsible for what.
Yeah, so really, one of the so a couple of things. One is really what I was wanting to see is if y'all would want to designate a spot. Number one, if that was even like something amenable to you guys. Part two of that would be is that my expectation and the expectation that Mr. Brown, and I can say this much about Mr. Brown, is that he's very, very entrepreneurial, very, very gung-ho. I would say that that is city-owned property, when it becomes a public nuisance, we have ways of handling that. Obviously, early on would be to let the volunteers know that we may come clean it up once or twice or something, because it'd be a small area of land, but that, we can put SOPs in place that, a 3-strike rule or something. But I don't really think that that's going to be an issue. I think they would probably clean up their mess and move on once they would stop if it was not of interest. And that was the conversation Mr. Brown and I had. But we can put a little few things in place to make sure that this is the rules of order. It was really just to see if y'all want to designate a spot, and if a community garden was even something y'all want to support. That's really so. But we can definitely put those things in place to make sure it's not an eyesore.
So Councilwoman, what I would suggest that we do is do with a license agreement. So that way we're not granting any property right to any group or entity that would be on it. And second, the bigger thing would be that if there's and it's not necessarily going to happen here, but if any city-owned property is deemed or interpreted to be by the public a park, then in order to remove that park status, it's an election. And so I think to avoid that issue of ever happening, that if you put that in a license agreement, we're not giving any property right away, we can put all the procedures you want in that license agreement that, will set all the parameters for how we want the thing to be structured, and that a license agreement would come back before the council for approval.
So Justin, with that in mind, would you recommend we go ahead and approve this, and then you would bring that agreement to us subsequently?
That's fine, yeah. And I'll structure a license
Yeah,
agreement
is that-
to have council approval, subject to whatever the city manager has in it.
Okay, Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, question. I'm trying to remember exactly what was on that property. I know at one time there was I think it was a car dealership, old car dealership that backed up part all the way. I think it backed up that whole piece of property there. My question is, should we have some type of soil test put on it just to make sure that, nothing's in that soil, since we're talking about putting a community garden there?
Well, that's possible. I would say is that what their plan is to actually stay above ground, to actually bring in small, basically each plant would
Not
actually have
above
this
ground garden?
above ground garden. So
Okay.
We could
Well,
always test the food first and see if it makes us sick for the
Seriously,
community.
because if I remember correctly, there was a dealership that I think took up both them lots all the way back.
we have geotech services that we can have done on it. So
I just trying to protect the city.
Any other comments or questions?
Do we need to amend the motion?
Councilman Brantley.
Sorry.
You're good.
Do we need to amend the motion? Right now, the current motion is authorizing a community garden next to the City Hall complex. So do we need to amend it to pending a formalized plan?
I mean, I'm comfortable with it as it is, because the only way you can, in my opinion, the only way we can prove that is through a license agreement or some type of agreement, and that's coming to you. So if you approve it, then it's going to be in the form of a license agreement. But if you amend the motion to reflect the license agreement, then that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah. The main thing is y'all authorizing me the ability to begin the process
Get
of
to work on it.
negotiating the use of some property. That's the big thing. It's a real property deal. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew it and were okay with us at least putting something together.
Okay.
Mr. Pruitt's earning his keep tonight.
Try.
Any jar, so I'm good to go.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10D, discussion and possible action concerning appointment of Bioanimal Services Board of Directors. I understand there's been someone would like to swap on that. Right now it has myself, Walter, and Jesse, but I understand Councilman Brantley, has there been?
I would like to remove my name from consideration and nominate Councilman Fred Linton.
Okay, so would you like to go ahead and then just make a motion nominating myself, Walter, and?
I would not. I would like somebody else to make the motion.
Okay. Would someone? Okay. So there's a motion to approve myself, Council Wilson, and Councilman Linton, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we'll have Councilwoman Simpson seconds. Any discussion?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
It's 7
Councilman,
board members, right? Total?
Yes, I believe it. There's some from other cities as well.
Right. I thought we had 4 of the 7, though.
We just don't have that fourth nominee yet.
And it can't be a member of council, or we'll have, well, it could be, but that's best that it's not. That gets complicated. So we'll be back on this one, I'm sure.
The bylaws were changed after discussion because there, you have I think it's the city secretary is one of the board members.
Well, they serve, now they're serving as an ex officio
Okay.
of the board
But I
now.
remember, anyway, the bylaws were
figured you'd
changed,
catch on.
right after you got here.
Remember,
Yeah.
I'm not.
But y'all still have the authority to, because previously, with the charter change, it said that obviously employees cannot be serving on the board, so we had to change the bylaws to reflect that obviously the city manager and the city secretary or chief finance officer couldn't serve on that board. So they've become ex officio, so that's opened up 2 spots, of which one of them, which would be Mr. Linton, as y'all have it nominated, but y'all still have 1 open. So if y'all know someone who's really caring about animals and would love to be involved, I would take any. I'm sure Ed will be more than happy to take a suggestion.
Well, also you have to remember that
In the future.
according to the bylaws, Dickinson has 3 seats, Friendswood has 2, Clear Shores has 1.
I think we have 4.
So if there was another city which we, may bring a city on, we would want to probably have that city have a board member.
We need to clear that up. 4 from Dickinson, 2 from Santa Fe, not Friendswood, 1 from Clear. You said Friendswood, sir.
Did I say Friendswood?
Yeah, it's 4 Dickinson, 2 Santa Fe, 1
Sure.
And 1 in Spring.
is okay.
From Louisiana.
All right, let's reel this back in. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
No.
Opposed?
No.
With 1 voting no. All right, Councilman Brantley voting no. All right, motion carries. Item 11A, Texas Local Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, discussion with attorney regarding contemplated pending litigation and regarding matters discussed by the attorney-client privilege. To wit, contract negotiations. We will adjourn into executive session at 9:09 p.m. legal matters discussed in executive session.
I make a motion to approve the City of Dickinson, Texas and Dickinson Police Officers Association collective bargaining agreement as amended.
Second.
All right, there's a motion to approve by Councilman Brantley, second by Councilman Simpson. Is there any discussion? I'd just like to say I'd like to salute the agreement. I think it is a great step towards fairly compensating the line officers. So thank you to city staff, to the union, everybody, Captain Jekyll, everybody that participated. So any other, and Walter.
I would like to follow up and echo.
Yes, Councilman Brantley.
I'd like to follow up and echo your statement and also thank City Manager Theo for empathetically working through that agreement. I think you did an excellent job, so.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 13, adjournment.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Wilson, second by Councilman Simpson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:55 p.m.